right, so moving on to the Saints 2021. A lot of optimism around the Saints with Jameis Winston coming in. Turned out to be Sean Payton's last year. Win expectations was at 10. Fell under it at 9-8. Went 9-8 against the spread as well, but had some nice money line winners there as kind of deep underdog. So a $100 1 unit better made almost $400 despite basically going 500. In fact, if I would have guessed how many wins the Saints had last year, I probably wouldn't have guessed 9. I probably would have guessed lower than that because I feel like, and you can kind of, it actually kind of leans into what this chart is telling you is they kind of went all the way up to like the second, third ranked team, according to 538 power rankings. And then it was just kind of this slow drip over the next kind of 8 weeks, just dripping lower, and then a waterfall lower, obviously, as they kind of dealt with a lot of offensive line injuries, Kamara injury, obviously Michael Thomas like never played, and then quarterback injuries, and it kind of like all fell apart there. But that's one thing that you can kind of doesn't really have any meaningful takeaway for this year. And I think maybe this is one of the reasons why kind of some people were left with necessarily like a bad impression about the Saints, which including myself. Anything but from you guys?
Yeah, I mean, the actual power rankings themselves are pretty shocking. Right there, mean power ranking was 7.5. Granted, this is just one source. It kind of goes to show where the Saints were early on in the year. And I think we all kind of left with the impression of like, oh, this is probably a 7-win team. People were really bullish on the Saints, and the roster has remained largely the same, if not better.
Yes.
Granted, the coach is different, and that's a massive loss that we should probably talk about. But I think the roster is just as good.
Yeah, I was extremely bullish on the Saints last year. They're probably my third. We do call the gas and fade list. They were team number 3 on my gas list. I was really high on them just because I thought that Jameis Winston, for all his flaws, was an upgrade over what was left of Drew Brees at that point. Sean Payton, I assumed, would be an elite head coach as he has been for so long. And the defense just stacked. Awesome talent, and they play an aggressive man coverage. It's good stuff. Obviously, Jameis Winston getting hurt threw a little bit of a wrench in that. But another thing that I thought threw a wrench in it was Sean Payton really disappointed me last year because he seemed so terrified of unleashing Jameis, letting Jameis be Jameis, throw downfield. Every pass was so short, it looked like Adam Gase Redux. And with Sean Payton leaving, they have a new coaching staff. It's mostly the same guys. Everybody just got promoted a little bit. I was scared at first. Like, they lost Sean Payton. He's amazing. Yeah, they get Jameis back. Yeah, their roster is mostly the same, which is really good. Who knows if Alvin Kamara will be a free man, if he'll be playing, if he won't. I don't know. But it's a running back. That being said, I don't think that Pete Carmichael, their same offensive coordinator, just now he's actually calling plays. I don't think he could be too much worse than what Sean Payton put in last year because it was so conservative. It was so vanilla, aside from putting Taysom Hill in every once in a while to turn the ball over for fun.
Yeah, everyone is lamenting the loss of Sean Payton. And, I mean, I don't know how I feel about Dennis Allen, which is like, so what's the replacement? But I don't think Sean Payton is necessarily a huge loss. I feel like he's kind of always been a little bit overrated. I feel like he mismanaged the quarterback position almost every week. He didn't manage Winston properly, in my opinion. And then he certainly didn't manage the quarterback position kind of like when they were trying to rotate whoever was kind of left. The kind of always kind of forcing Taysom Hill into the lineup just always seemed like a head scratcher. Again, Taysom Hill is talented. I feel like he's an awesome athlete, and that's why I'm really excited about if you use him as a gadget guy. Yeah, he comes in and throws maybe every once in a while, or he's a tight end, or he's a running back, or he's a fullback, or he's a wide receiver. Like, and plays that type of role, he can provide a lot of value. But putting him as a full-time quarterback is certainly not the role for him, and they kind of suffered the consequences for it. Although certainly he was probably their best quarterback outside of, obviously Winston, but he was probably was like one of the better quarterbacks kind of in the rotation. So maybe you can kind of give him the benefit of the doubt there. What do you think, Judy? How do you evaluate the loss of Peyton and now going into the
Yeah. So I think I definitely come in with a higher prior on Peyton being an excellent head coach. But one of the more difficult parts as analysts, if not impossible, is disentangling kind of like who's actually the coordinator, who's actually the play design, who are the brains behind an offense. And then the follow up to that being how well can someone succeed. And then we talked last week a lot about how I can never understand why, right? Because someone coached under Bill Belichick, therefore they'll be able to bring the Patriots way elsewhere. It's almost impossible to kind of know, and I think we should treat it with a lot of uncertainty. Kind of what Pete Carmichael is without Sean Payton. It's impossible for us to know in advance.
Yeah, I don't think there's really too much else because the team was just so disrupted last year, and there's now going to be so many new faces that there's not really too much to take away from the team last year. So kind of looking at the offseason changes, obviously drafted Olave from Ohio State. I pretty much only read positive things about him. So maybe it's just it's a little bit it's kind of overheated excitement about him. But I definitely read that he seems to be like a more mature, kind of ready for the NFL kind of day one. Jarvis Landry, I think, is like a certainly fine addition as kind of like a supporting cast member. I like the additions of Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu, kind of rotating off some of the safeties that they lost with Marcus Williams and Malcolm Jenkins. But that defense is still going to be elite. I think the new safeties are certainly just as good, if not maybe a little bit less so, but still robust. Great cornerbacks, great defensive line, a little bit of weakness in the linebacker core. But if the offensive line can come back too, I mean, this is kind of positives pretty much across the board. And that's one of the reasons why I think if all of this comes together, even if Tom Brady doesn't get hurt and even if Tom Brady plays well, I think the Saints can still win this division.
Yeah, I think that's right. And even just another addition, Michael Thomas seems to be playing, regardless of how good he'll be, and I think a lot of his success can be attributed to Drew Brees and the playing style. It's still an upgrade over what they had last year, and that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah, and they also had another few, like pretty much all their wide receivers kept going down at some point in time. So I'm reserving kind of judgment on how I'm trying to evaluate. Like, I'm not really I'm bullish on the Saints, but it doesn't include Michael Thomas because I don't know what Michael Thomas is anymore. I mean, like, dude hasn't played for like 2 years. It seems like maybe 3 years. Like,
and he was overrated last time he played too. So like, it's tough.
And those wide receivers, man, like they're good, and man, they take a little time off, or even if they don't, and they can just drop off like that. I mean, that's the thing is when you rely on speed, agility, being able to pivot. I mean, those knees go a little bit, and you're done. You're just done. That's one of the reasons why I think, again, running back rely on even more so, and why they have like 2-3 good years for the most part, and then they're done. And you never hear like they're out of the league in just a handful of years. So going into 2022, 8.5 wins again is the expectation. Plus 310 to win the division. Plus 125 to win the playoffs. One thing that I have here is plus 550 for Jameis Winston to be comeback player of the year. I think that seems pretty attractive, especially if you wanted to feed into that kind of bull Saints case. 9th easiest strength of schedule. Again, implied strength of schedule. Net rest minus 8 days, mean spread essentially flat, which kind of makes sense with 8.5 expected wins. Anything kind of stick out to either of you guys here?
I mean, I really love the price on the division and the playoffs. I actually got these both earlier in the offseason. But I think that says a lot about Tampa Bay, which we'll get into soon. But also, I think that even without Tampa Bay's demise, which is kind of to your point, this team really has, especially if their defense can play as they were last year, even if defenses do regress, And Jameis Winston, I think, with the comeback player of the year, it kind of expresses that there's a real chance that Jameis Winston is a good NFL quarterback. And pair that with a good defense, and the Saints have a real case to make some noise.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised at that middle of their schedule that they're not more significant favorites in some of these games. Like Pittsburgh, that line makes absolutely no sense to me. San Francisco doesn't make a ton of sense to me. The Vikings certainly, well, the Vikings are scary. They could be good, but I have no idea what their coach is. I see the Saints as about a 12-win team, assuming health and assuming that their coaching staff is more of the same from last year. Frank, like I said, I'm really high on this division, which is bad because it means that at least two of the teams are going to disappoint me. But I really love Saints to make the playoffs. I think the division is tough just because the Bucs, I think, are still really tough. But at that price, at plus 310, I think you would have to take a little shot there if you're into season-long bets. Really, everything up and down the board for the Saints looks good. I don't know about comeback player of the year just because so much of that is narrative-driven. Yeah. Jameis isn't the most likable, popular guy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
he's so easy to dunk on.
You express that conviction. I mean, his videos are terrific. I think we should note that. Certainly the most entertaining part of football season. But I think like expressing the Winston conviction, I think, is best place in the division. Where if Winston's going to be good, it probably means they're making a case in the division, and you're taking away and stripping any possible narrative alternatives.
Yeah. No, I think that's great points. And yeah, I think, actually the Winston does actually seem unplayable, in fact, because you're totally right. It's totally driven around narrative, and I don't think you can get a huge backing around Winston. And even if it started to percolate, he would do something that would just totally ruin it. And two, I mean, he's obviously got such a volatile type of play that, again, like it's just so Jameis Winston, that Tampa Bay year, 30 touchdowns, 30 picks. I mean, 30 picks.
I think them like pick six to the line.
Half of them were like pick sixes. Yeah.
No,
so he really threw for like 45 touchdowns.
But it's not even that he has like a lot of picks or he has a lot of bad plays. It's that they look fucking hilarious. Like he had one play.
He'll spin around in a circle and then just like throw it up. And
you're joking, but I was literally about to say there was a play last year that I was grading his games and I didn't know how to grade it because he literally ran in a circle and he was not facing downfield. He was facing behind him, threw the ball 50 yards in the air on a dime into his receiver's hands for a touchdown. That could so easily go the opposite way. A defender could catch it, and then that is going to be memed for at least 2 weeks, and that will crush his narrative value for comeback player of the year.
Yeah, and that was actually because, you're right. That happened last year when he was a Saint, when there was this broader kind of upside narrative around Winston and the fact that, this team is like they're going to be able to change Winston's behavior. And in fact, they weren't able to. The way they changed his behavior was basically handcuffing him and not even calling the plays that would allow him to put himself in a position to do something like that. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised that it was like that play. It was like, oh no, you don't. And then it just got even more conservative kind of after that. So it'll be interesting to see if, 'cause there's less Breeze influence, I feel like, on the franchise these days than it was certainly when Peyton was there. Now there's no Peyton as well in his ear. So who's in his ear anymore these days? I think we'll get a good sense, I feel like right off the bat, because the Falcons obviously are not going to have a great defense. And we're going to see are they going to allow Winston to try to exploit that defense, particularly the guys we're just talking about. They have terrible safeties. So are they going to Winston, we know, at least has a big arm and that pretty accurate deep ball. And so here we go. Test it out right away. This would be a great point to kind of put that hypothesis kind of test it. And then again, even over that first couple weeks, Vikings questionable kind of defense, at least a lot of turnover, and then the Seahawks as well. You could see the Saints being 4-1, almost right off the bat. And again, you're almost halfway home there, right off the bat. And then again, that middle of the season there, that's not that tough of competition, especially if some of those narratives go their wrong ways.